Welcome back to Game Tail Chronicles. Today we are starting Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. Our story follows Phoenix Wright, a defense attorney who takes on criminal cases, fights for his clients in court, and trust me, the courtroom in this game is anything but normal. Witnesses lying through their teeth, prosecutors who will do anything to win, and Phoenix has to find real evidence and use it to fight back and actually win. Now, Phoenix is still pretty new to all of this, so he is very much learning as he goes, but he never backs down. So sit back, relax, and let's join Phoenix on his journey. A man gasps for breath, panic tightening around his chest. His thoughts race as fear takes hold. He cannot get caught, not like this. There has to be a way out. Someone else has to take the fall. Someone convenient, someone easy, someone like him. If the crime is staged just right, no one will ever question it. Phoenix Wright stands in the lobby, trying and failing to calm his nerves. This is his first trial, a murder case. His thoughts spiral as the reality sets in. Then a familiar voice cuts through the tension. Mia Fey arrives, relieved she made it in time. She's impressed. Not many rookie attorneys take on a murder trial as their very first case. It says a lot about Phoenix, she says, and about his client. Phoenix brushes off the praise. The truth is simpler. He owes his client a favour. Mia is surprised. Phoenix admits it openly. He knew the defendant before the case. In fact, he owes his entire career to him. That man is one of the reasons Phoenix became a lawyer in the first place. Mia hadn't known that. Phoenix makes it clear. He wants to help his client in any way he can. He owes him that much. Suddenly, a voice nearby erupts in despair. Someone is shouting about everything being over. Mia glances over. Is that his client? Phoenix sighs. Yes, it is. The voice grows louder, more frantic. Whoever it is sounds ready to give up on life entirely. Mia comments that it sounds like he wants to die. Phoenix can't disagree. Moments later, the man rushes over. It's Larry Butts. Larry grabs Phoenix immediately, shouting that he's guilty. He demands the death sentence, claiming he's not afraid to die. Phoenix is stunned. He asks what's wrong. Larry is hysterical. His life is finished. He can't live without her. Through tears and panic, he demands to know who took his girlfriend away from him. Phoenix thinks quietly to himself. According to the newspapers, the answer is obvious. They say it was Larry. This is Phoenix Wright's first case. On paper, it looks simple. A young woman was murdered in her apartment. The man arrested was her boyfriend, Larry Butts, Phoenix's best friend since grade school. Back then, their school had a saying, when something smells, it's usually the Butts. In the 23 years Phoenix has known him, that saying has often proven true. Larry has a habit of finding trouble wherever he goes. But there's one thing Phoenix knows better than anyone. When trouble finds Larry, it's usually not his fault. He just has terrible luck. And beneath that luck, he's a good person. Phoenix owes him. That's why he took the case. And that's why he's determined to clear Larry's name. The courtroom comes to order as the trial of Larry Butts begins. The prosecution announces its readiness. The defence follows, less confidently. The judge turns his attention to Phoenix, then asks if this is his first trial. Phoenix admits it, his nerves obvious. The judge reminds him that his conduct here will decide his client's fate. Murder is a serious charge, and Phoenix will need to keep himself under control. Phoenix thanks him, trying to steady his voice. Given the circumstances, the judge decides to test Phoenix's readiness before proceeding. Phoenix swallows hard, his hands tremble, his vision blurs. The test will be simple. A few basic questions. The judge asks Phoenix to answer clearly and concisely. The first question is straightforward. Please state the name of the defendant in this case. Phoenix answers at once this time. The defendant is Larry Butts. Correct, the judge says. As long as Phoenix keeps his wits about him, he should do just fine. Then comes the next question. This is a murder trial. Who is the victim? Phoenix exhales in relief. He knows this one. He read the case report cover to cover, over and over again. And then his mind goes completely blank. Mia can't believe what she's hearing. Is Phoenix absolutely sure he's ready for this? Not knowing the victim's name is basic. Phoenix scrambles to recover. Of course he knows the victim's name. He's just temporarily forgotten it. Mia rubs her temples. She says she can feel a migraine coming on. Then she reminds him, very carefully, that the victim's name is listed in the court record. He can check it at any time. He needs to remember that, often. She practically begs him to. The judge waits patiently, then asks again, who is the victim in this case? Phoenix hesitates, then answers. The victim's name is Cindy Stone. Correct. The judge moves on immediately. This is a murder trial. He asks what the cause of death was. Phoenix answers firmly. The victim was struck once by a blunt object. Correct. The judge nods, satisfied. Phoenix has answered all the questions and there's no reason not to proceed. He even remarks that Phoenix seems more relaxed now. Phoenix thanks him politely, while thinking he doesn't feel relaxed at all. The judge turns his attention to the prosecution and calls on Mr. Payne. Payne steps forward. Since the victim was struck with a blunt object, the judge asks him to explain exactly what that object was. Payne presents the murder weapon. A statue of the thinker found lying on the floor next to the victim's body. The statue is added to the court record. Mia quietly reminds Phoenix to pay close attention. Evidence is the only ammunition he has in court. He needs to check the court record often and stay alert. The judge allows the prosecution to call its first witness. Payne announces it confidently. The prosecution calls the defendant, Larry Butts, to the stand. Phoenix's anxiety spikes immediately. He asks Mia what he's supposed to do now. She tells him to focus. This is his chance to listen. He'll have an opportunity to respond later, but only if he's paying attention now. She just hopes Larry doesn't say anything unfortunate. Phoenix already knows how likely that is. Payne clears his throat and begins. He asks Larry if it's true that the victim had recently dumped him. Larry bristles at the accusation. They were great together, he insists. Legendary even. Like Romeo and Juliet. Like Cleopatra and Mark Antony. Phoenix thinks to himself that none of those comparisons ended well. Larry denies being dumped. She just stopped answering his calls, stopped seeing him completely. And what's that got to do with anything, he asks. Payne calmly explains that this is generally what people mean by dumped. He continues, revealing that the victim had completely abandoned Larry and was seeing other men. She had even returned from overseas with one of them the day before the murder. Larry refuses to believe it. He calls it all lies. Payne responds by presenting evidence, the victim's passport. According to it, she had been in Paris until the day before her death. The passport is added to the court record. The judge reviews it and confirms the timeline. Larry is stunned. Payne presses on. The victim was a model, but she didn't earn much money. To support her lifestyle, she relied on several older men who gave her money and gifts, sugar daddies. Larry struggles to process that information. Payne lays it out plainly. Cindy Stone took their money and used it to live comfortably. Given everything revealed, Payne asks Larry what he thinks of her now. Mia quietly warns Phoenix. He really does not want Larry to answer that question. Phoenix hesitates. Larry has a habit of saying exactly the wrong thing at exactly the wrong time, and Phoenix has to decide whether to step in or let it happen. Phoenix jumps in before things spiral completely out of control. He objects, stating that his client had no idea the victim was seeing other men and that the question is irrelevant to the case. Payne recoils slightly at the interruption. Larry does not. He immediately turns on Phoenix, shouting in confusion and anger, loudly insulting the victim. He spirals again, declaring that he's going to die, that he's just going to drop dead. He even claims that when he meets her in the afterlife, he'll get to the bottom of everything. The judge cuts him off and urges the court to continue. Payne takes the opportunity. He states that the accused's motive is clear to everyone. The judge agrees. Phoenix can feel the situation worsening by the second. Payne moves on to his next question. He asks Larry whether he went to the victim's apartment on the day of the murder. Larry gulps. Payne presses him for a clear answer. Larry laughs nervously and dodges the question. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Phoenix freezes. That hesitation alone could cost them everything. Now he has to decide how to handle it. Phoenix makes a snap decision. He sends Larry a signal. Tell the truth. Larry stiffens, then blurts it out. Yes, he was there. The courtroom erupts. The judge calls for order and turns his attention back to Larry, demanding clarification. He tells them to relax. The victim wasn't home. He didn't see her. Nothing happened. Payne immediately objects. He accuses Larry of lying. The judge looks up sharply. Lying? The prosecution intends to call a witness, someone who can prove that Larry Butts is not telling the truth. The judge nods. That does simplify matters. He asks the prosecution to name its witness. Payne answers immediately. The witness is the man who discovered the victim's body. Just before making that discovery, he claims to have seen the defendant fleeing the scene of the crime. The courtroom stirs. The judge calls for order, then grants permission for the prosecution to call the witness. Payne proceeds. This is not good, Phoenix thinks. On the day of the murder, the witness had been selling newspapers at the victim's building. Payne calls him to the stand. And Mr. Frank Sahwit. Payne begins by confirming that Mr. Sahwit sells newspaper subscriptions. Sahwit confirms. The judge allows him to proceed and instructs him to tell the court exactly what he saw on the day of the murder. Sahwit delivers his account. He says he was going door to door, selling subscriptions, when he saw a man fleeing from an apartment. The man appeared to be in a hurry, leaving the door half open behind him. Finding this suspicious, Sahwit says he looked inside. That's when he saw her. A woman lying there, not moving, dead. He claims fear overtook him and that he couldn't bring himself to enter the apartment. Instead, he decided to call the police immediately. However, the phone inside the apartment wasn't working. Unable to place the call, he went to a nearby park and used a public phone instead. He remembers the time clearly. It was 1 p.m, and the man he saw running from the apartment was, without a doubt, the defendant seated in the courtroom. The judge considers the testimony in silence. Phoenix panics internally. Larry never mentioned any of this. A testimony like that is devastating. The judge then asks a follow-up question. Why wasn't the phone in the victim's apartment working? Payne explains that at the time of the murder, the building was experiencing a blackout. The judge questions that. Aren't phones supposed to work during a blackout? Payne clarifies. While that's generally true, some cordless phones do not function without power. The phone in question was one of those models. He presents official documentation of the blackout. The blackout record is added to the court record. The judge turns his attention to Phoenix and calls his name. Phoenix answers, then falters, unsure of what he's being asked. The judge informs him that he may begin his cross-examination. Phoenix freezes. Cross-examination? Mia turns to him. She tells him this is it. The real deal. Phoenix asks what he's supposed to do. Mia explains it plainly. His job is to expose the lies in the testimony the witness just gave. Phoenix reacts with disbelief. Lies? Was the witness lying? Mia turns the question back on him. If his client is innocent, then the witness must have lied in his testimony. Otherwise, the implication is obvious. Phoenix asks how he's supposed to prove Larry isn't guilty. Mia tells him he already has what he needs. The key is the evidence. He has to compare the witness's testimony with the information in the court record. Somewhere between the two, there must be a contradiction. First, find where the testimony and the evidence don't match. Then present the contradicting evidence. Then rub it in the witness's face. Mia reminds him to open the court record and point out the contradictions in the testimony. Phoenix listened carefully as Sahwit ran through his testimony again. He let each statement pass until Sahwit reached the part about the time. Sahwit insisted he had seen the body at 1 p.m.
Objection!
Phoenix focuses on one detail from the testimony. He asks Sahwit if he's certain he found the body at 1 p.m. Sahwit insists he is. 1 o'clock, for certain. Phoenix challenges him immediately. He says he finds that hard to believe. Sahwit's statement contradicts the autopsy report, which places the time of death sometime after 4 p.m. If that's true, then there would have been no body to find at 1 p.m. Phoenix asks Sahwit to explain the 3-hour gap. Sahwit freezes. Payne objects, calling it trivial. He claims the witness merely forgot the time. The judge disagrees. After hearing the testimony, he finds that hard to believe. He asks Sahwit why he was so certain the time was 1 p.m. Sahwit stumbles. He struggles to answer, then admits it's a good question. Mia turns to Phoenix. She praises him for putting the witness on the spot. That's all he has to do, she explains. Point out contradictions. Lies lead to more lies. Once one is exposed, the rest of the story can fall apart. Sahwit pauses, then says he remembers now. The judge allows him to give his testimony again. Sahwit explains that when he found the body, he heard the time being announced. A voice saying the time, likely coming from the television. He acknowledges that the time was 3 hours off. He suggests the victim must have been watching a recorded program, which is why he believed it was 1 p.m. He apologises for the misunderstanding. The judge considers the explanation and notes that Sarwit heard a time announcement from a taped television program. He then turns to Phoenix and allows him to cross-examine the witness. Mia reminds Phoenix that he knows what to do. Phoenix answers calmly. He says he's got this one. Phoenix listened as Sarwit ran through his testimony again. He let each statement pass until he got to the part about the television in the apartment. Sarwit told the court he had heard the time from a television in the apartment, claiming the victim must have been watching a recorded program. That was why he had said 1 p.m.
Objection!
Phoenix focuses on the blackout. He points out that the prosecution already established there was a blackout at the time the body was discovered and presents the blackout record as proof. Sarwit falters. Phoenix presses the point. If there was a blackout, then Sarwit could not have heard a television or a video playing. Sarwit breaks down, struggling to respond. The judge acknowledges the contradiction. The defence has a point, he says, and asks Sarwit if he has an explanation. Sarwit hesitates. He claims he finds it puzzling himself. Then he insists that he remembers something else. The judge interrupts him. The court would prefer an accurate testimony from the beginning. These constant corrections are damaging Sarwit's credibility. He also notes that Sarwit appears unsettled. Sarwit apologises and claims the confusion must have been caused by the shock of finding the body. The judge instructs him to give his testimony once more. Sarwit changes his explanation. He claims he did not hear the time at all. He says he saw it. He insists there was a table clock in the apartment. He identifies it as the murder weapon, claiming it was used to strike the victim. That, he says, must have been what he saw. The judge considers the claim. Seeing a clock, he notes, would explain Sarwit's certainty about the time. He then allows the defence to cross-examine the witness again. Phoenix says gladly, Phoenix listened as Sarwit ran through his testimony again. Sarwit told the court he had not heard the time but seen it on a table clock in the apartment. The same clock that had been used to kill the victim.
Objection!
Phoenix raises another question. He points out that the murder weapon was not a clock, but a statue, and asks how it could possibly be considered a clock. Sarwit reacts defensively. He complains about the constant objections and evidence, then demands to know who Phoenix thinks he is. Phoenix ignores the outburst and tells Sarwit to answer the question. Sarwit insists he saw it clearly. It was there, he says. A clock. Payne asks if he may speak. The judge allows it. Payne explains that the witness is correct. The statue is in fact a clock. The neck functions as a switch. Tilt it, and it announces the time out loud. Because it doesn't resemble a typical clock, Payne submitted it as a statue. He apologises for the confusion. The judge accepts the explanation. The murder weapon was a table clock after all. He turns to Phoenix and asks whether the defence still has any issue with the witness's testimony. Phoenix addresses the court. He states that there is a clear hole in the witness's testimony. The only way Sarwit could have known the weapon was a clock was by holding it in his hand. Yet Sarwit testified that he never entered the apartment. That is a contradiction. The judge considers the argument and agrees. Phoenix continues. The witness knew the object was a clock because he went into the apartment. Sarwit was inside the apartment on the day of the murder. Sarwit challenges him, demanding proof. Phoenix answers without hesitation. He says he can do better than that. He accuses Sarwit directly. Sarwit was the one who killed the victim. He struck her with the clock, and the shock of the blow triggered the clock's voice. That was the sound Sarwit heard. The judge calls for order. He finds the argument intriguing and asks Phoenix to continue. He addresses Sarwit directly. The sound, he says, must have left a strong impression. That would be natural, given that the murder weapon spoke at the moment it struck the victim. The voice would have been burned into Sarwit's memory, which explains why he was so certain about the time. Payne objects at once, calling the argument baseless conjecture. Phoenix answers by telling the court to look at the witness. Sarwit falters, his composure cracking. The judge turns to him and asks him to explain himself. Did he strike the victim with the clock? Sarwit stammers and contradicts himself. He tries to deny it, then trips over his own words. He alternates between claiming he heard the clock and claiming he saw it. His composure collapses entirely. He erupts, shouting accusations and insisting it was Larry who killed her. The judge calls for order. Payne urgently objects, insisting there is no evidence supporting the defence's claims. The judge turns to Phoenix and demands an answer. If the sound the witness heard came from the clock, does the defense have evidence to prove it? Phoenix knew the whole case was riding on this. He took a moment to think it through carefully. Phoenix told the judge that the sound Sarwit had heard was definitely the clock. He said it would be clear if the court simply tried sounding it. He asked the judge if he could have the clock so they could sound it here in the court. He then asked the court to listen very carefully. The clock emits a beep and states that it thinks the time is 8:25. The judge remarks that it is a strange way to announce the time. Phoenix notes that the clock is shaped like the thinker, after all. The judge asks for Phoenix's conclusion. Phoenix turns to Payne and asks him what time it is now. Payne answers, "It is 11:25. Phoenix points out the discrepancy. The clock is exactly 3 hours slow, precisely the same difference between what Sarwit claimed to hear and the time of death. He challenges Sarwit to explain his way out of it. Sarwit laughs and claims Phoenix has forgotten something. Phoenix falters, unsure what he means. Sarwit argues that even if the clock is 3 hours slow now, that proves nothing. There is no proof it was running 3 hours slow on the day of the murder. Without that, he says, the defense has no case. Phoenix's expression dropped. He had no way to prove it. He had been so close. The judge states that Phoenix lacks the critical evidence to support his claim. He says he cannot allow the witness to be indicted and ends the cross-examination of Frank Sarwit. Sarwit erupts in anger, shouting that he came all the way to testify only to be treated like a criminal. He lashes out at the defense. He had almost had him. Phoenix thought of Larry and knew he had failed him. There was nothing he could do now. Mia tells Sarwit not so fast. Phoenix reacts in surprise, calling her Mia, then quickly corrects himself and calls her Chief. Mia tells Phoenix not to throw the case away. Not like this. She tells him to think. Phoenix insists it's over. He says he can't prove the clock was slow on the day of the murder. Nobody can prove that. Mia acknowledges the point, then pushes back. That doesn't mean Phoenix can't still win. She tells him to assume the clock was 3 hours slow and think it through. If he can figure out why the clock was 3 hours slow, he will have his proof. She asks Phoenix if he can think of a reason the clock would be 3 hours slow. Phoenix pauses, deep in thought. Then he realises something. Mia urges him on. There must be evidence somewhere that can prove it. He needs to find it and present it. The judge turns to Phoenix. If he claims the clock was already running slow on the day of the murder, then he must have evidence to support that claim. Phoenix answers confidently. There is a piece of evidence in the court record that can prove it beyond a doubt. Sawit scoffs, challenging him to prove it. The court waits for Phoenix to present the evidence explaining why the clock was running slow. Phoenix presents his conclusion. He explains that the victim had returned home from abroad the day before the murder. The time difference between here and Paris is 9 hours. When it is 4 p.m. locally, it is already 1 a.m. the next day in Paris. The clock was not 3 hours slow, it was 9 hours fast. The victim had not reset the clock after returning home. That is why the time Sawit heard when he struck the victim in her apartment was wrong. Phoenix addresses Sawit directly and asks if that is proof enough. Sawit recoils in shock, then faints. The judge calls for order in the courtroom. The judge reflects on the outcome of the trial. It has unfolded very differently than expected. He turns to the prosecution and asks about their witness. Payne answers hesitantly. The witness has been arrested and taken away. The judge acknowledges this and turns to Phoenix. The judge admits that he is impressed. He says he has rarely seen a defence concluded so quickly, while also uncovering the true culprit in the process. The judge proceeds to the verdict. At this point, it is only a formality. The court finds the defendant, Larry Butt, not guilty. With that, the judge declares the court adjourned. Frank Sawit was a common burglar. He posed as a newspaper salesman to check when people were away from their homes. That day, when Larry went to the victim's apartment, she was not there. After Larry left, Sawit let himself inside to carry out the burglary. While he was searching the apartment, the victim returned. Caught off guard, Sawit grabbed the nearest blunt object he could find and struck her. Relief finally catches up to Phoenix. He can hardly believe they won. Mia congratulates him warmly. Phoenix thanks her, still flustered. He tells her he owes it all to her. Mia dismisses the praise. He fought his own battles, she says. It's been a long time since she has seen a trial end on such a satisfying note. Phoenix notices how happy she looks. If she is this pleased, he can only imagine how Larry must feel. Larry suddenly appears, in tears, saying his life is over. Phoenix asks what's wrong. Larry tells him not to worry about him. He says he'll be dead and gone soon. Confused, Phoenix asks what he means. He's an innocent man now. Larry breaks down, saying Cindy is gone forever. Phoenix starts to think something unkind, then stops himself. Mia congratulates Larry, calling him Harry. Larry blinks, confused by the name. Mia explains. She can already picture the headlines. Harry Butt's innocent. Larry laughs awkwardly. He thanks them and says he owes them everything. Then asks if they want to celebrate with dinner or maybe a movie, his treat. Mia politely refuses. Larry suddenly remembers something. He pulls out a small object and offers it to Mia as a present. Mia hesitates. She recognises it. Wasn't this evidence from the trial? Larry explains. He made the clock for Cindy. He made one for her and one for himself. Mia is taken aback. After a moment, she accepts it and says she'll keep it as a memento. Larry turns to Phoenix, his emotions spilling over again. He can't believe how much he cared for Cindy, and how she was only playing him for a fool. The realisation makes him cry. Mia asks quietly if he's really so sure. Larry looks at her, confused. Mia explains. She thinks Cindy cared about him, in her own way. Larry brushes it off. She doesn't need to sympathise with him. Mia says she isn't just sympathising. She looks to Phoenix and asks if he agrees. Doesn't he have something to show Larry? Something that proves how Cindy felt about him? Phoenix freezes. He agrees aloud, still confused, with no idea what she's talking about. Phoenix realises what Mia meant. He shows Larry the clock and tells him it is proof that he was not meaningless to her. Larry doesn't understand. He asks what the clock has to do with anything. It is the clock Larry made for her, the one she took with her when she travelled. Larry brushes it off. He says she probably just needed a clock. Phoenix points out how heavy it is, not something someone would casually take along while travelling. Phoenix tells him to make of it what he will. After a moment, Larry tells Phoenix he's glad he asked him to be his lawyer. He means it. He tears up and thanks him wholeheartedly. Phoenix quietly thinks that he hopes it made him feel better. Mia turns to Phoenix and speaks seriously. She hopes he understands the importance of evidence now. She tells him that things can change depending on how you look at them. People included. You never truly know whether a client is guilty or innocent. All you can do is believe in them. And to do that, you have to believe in yourself. She tells him to listen, to learn, and to grow strong. Never let go of what he believes in. With that, her tone lightens. She says their work here is done and asks if they should be off. Phoenix agrees. Mia suggests dinner, her treat. They can drink a toast to innocent butts. Phoenix agrees enthusiastically. Mia adds one more thought. Speaking of Larry, Phoenix mentioned earlier that part of the reason he became a lawyer was because of him. Phoenix admits that's true, at least in part. Mia says she would like to hear more about it sometime, maybe over drinks. Phoenix reflects on how his first trial came to an end. Larry clapped him on the back and joked that it was good to have friends. Phoenix is fairly certain Larry never paid them, unless the clock he gave Mia counts. At the time, Phoenix didn't think much of it. He didn't know that the clock would soon be at the centre of another incident. And the promise he made, to tell the chief more about himself and Larry, would be one promise he wouldn't be able to keep. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing to catch the next one. See you next time.